to the introduction to creating formative assessments using Google Forms and Flubaroo. I'm Jeff Lisandrello. You can find me online at blendedlearners.com or on Twitter at edtechjeff. In this first video, we'll look at how to create a quiz using Google Forms and how to send that out to your class. In the second video, we'll look at the information gathered by the form and how we can use Flubaroo to grade it, and how we can look at some graphs and to interpret that information to guide our instruction. First things first, you're going to want to log into Google Drive. If you have a Google account, even Gmail, Calendar, you can click over here on this 3x3 box thing and go to Google Drive from that way, or you can enter drive.google.com. If you don't yet have a Google account, it will ask you to create one. And if you don't know how to use that, there are plenty of videos out there that'll show you how to create a Google account. Once we're in Drive, we're going to create a new file, and our options don't show us Google Forms unless we go down to More. Under More, we'll find the purple option to create a new Google form. And first thing I'm going to do is give it a name. So let's call it video test form. And when I do that, as you see, it also titles my form with that. I can change it if I want. And I'll go up, let's look at we can change the color palette, even insert a photo. Since I'm giving my kids a quiz, I like to come up with something nice and relaxing, like a day on the beach, and then it gives it a cool little header background. If I want to see a live preview of my form, I go right here, and I can also change some settings. So this is definitely important to check before you send it out to your class. I work in a domain. We have a domain for our school, and so I can set it so that only people in the school can respond, or I can leave it open to anyone. If I leave it to just people in the school, a nice option I like is to automatically collect their username, so I know every kid who sends it in, even if they don't put their name on it or put somebody else's name. I often will only allow them to submit one response, but I do like to allow them to edit their response. I would suggest you don't let them see summary of responses, though this can also be useful for polls, and in that case I would probably let them see a summary of responses. And if it's something longer, I might show a progress bar at the bottom. If it's multiple pages, another cool feature is to shuffle the question order. So if I'm giving a quiz, it prevents them from looking on with the person next to them. So we'll save those settings as they are. Of my video test form, I'll leave the description blank for now. And you see we start with one question. Let's say, is the sun bigger than the moon? And it's a multiple choice, so I'll give the options of yes and no. Let's say we want to give, and I can click down and make it as many options as I want. It doesn't have to just be two. If I like this question, I want to do a few like it, maybe I'll make some copies, and that saves me a little time. Is a bowling ball heavier than a feather, etc., etc. I can decide to make it required or leave it as is. And another option I have is I can even change the type of question. So let's make another copy and look at checkboxes is similar, but I can select more than one, or they can select more than one. Drop down is basically like this menu right here where they select by highlighting the option. Short answer, they kind of fill in the blank there. Paragraph, they write sentence or paragraph form. Linear scale is a cool one, especially for polls. I can say that 1 means not a chance and 5 means definitely. So if I want to have people rate, okay, would you use Google Forms with your students? And then they can rate it on that scale. And again, I might want to make copies if I'm going to do a number of these. One last option I'll look at, date and time are in there, but that's pretty self-explanatory. The multiple choice grid is pretty cool. I can say let's say I want each column to be not at all, somewhat, in the middle, very, and extremely. And then I can say, you know, do you like cheese, soda, candy, things like that. And then it'll come up as a grid so that I don't have to enter all these options for each one. And then again, we'll see when we get to the data how the type of question determines the data that it generates. That you're gonna have to do a little bit of trial and error. You can use your imagination, but Google actually automatically generates some cool graphics with the responses that, again, we'll look at in the second video. Now, in addition to questions, we can also add a title or description, like a text box, a movie, a video, or an image. You know, sometimes you want to you can put a video in and then ask questions about the video, or put a picture and ask some questions about the picture. And we can also separate into sections if we want to do that. So let's take a look at a form that's already been completed. This is a quiz that I made, and as you can see, I started with checkboxes for parts of speech, because sometimes the same word can have multiple parts of speech, so I use checkboxes for all of these. Then I give a word bank using a text box, and then a short answer where they fill in the word from the text box. I give them the definition. Then I have a multiple choice section where I give them some sentences. Gentlemen, please gather the debris we'll be using to prepare dinner. It's a multiple choice, so they can only choose correct or incorrect, but not both. Now, when I'm ready to send out my form, I click this send button up here, and I can do it. Again, I can decide who can respond, if I'm going to automatically collect, can they submit only one responses, some of the settings we looked at earlier, and I can send it via email. I can use a link, and I usually will shorten the link, copy it, and I like to do it by posting it as an announcement in Google Classroom. There are a number of ways to do it. You can post it on your website, or you can email if you have a group name that emails out to all of your students. You have to be careful with the email, because if you email to a group, sometimes it doesn't recognize that you actually sent it to that person. So if you're going to do that, you might want to open it to anyone, so nobody gets blocked out from using the link for any reason. So I hope this is helpful. In our next video, we'll look at the data that comes back from a quiz like this one, and how we can use Flubaroo to grade it, and how we can use some of the visual data generated by Google Forms to help us make instructional decisions.